4 a.m., January 4th, 2026. Lipetsk is rocked by a massive explosion. Russia's largest military battery manufacturing plant, Energia, is engulfed in flames. Smoke rises hundreds of feet into the air as fires rage out of control. Russian authorities immediately declared a red-level UAV threat across the entire region. Drone alerts were expanded nationwide shortly after. This was already the 5th time this facility had been targeted. But this time, Ukraine did not strike from across the border. Ukraine broke in from the inside. Baba Yaga drones and their swarms were already operating deep within Russian territory. The factory was not just hit by a missile, it was set on fire from within. Before the sun rose over the frozen plains of Lipetsk, a dusty civilian delivery truck pulled over on a secondary road. It was parked just 15 miles outside the city of Yelets. To any passing patrol, it looked like a routine shipment of potatoes or electronics. Instead, the cargo bay held the most expensive buy one, get 5 free deal in military history. Meet the Baba Yaga. This is a 120-pound carbon fiber hexacopter with motors that growl like a vintage Harley-Davidson. In this mission, these assets acted as heavy-lift motherships. Each Baba Yaga was acting as a flying aircraft carrier, cradling 5 smaller FPV drones under its frame. That is 4 mamas and 20 children. The swarm was designed to ensure that if one drone is jammed, the rest keep coming. The target was the Energia plant, the gigafactory of the Russian military. This facility is the heartbeat of the precision-guided gear. It churns out the high-end lithium-ion batteries that power Iskander missiles and Kinzhal hypersonic systems. Russia's strategy was simple. Keep the factory 155 miles from the front line. They surrounded it with $1 billion worth of Pantsir and Tor air defense systems. On paper, it was an untouchable fortress. But Ukraine found a loophole in the fine print. A massive blizzard was currently screaming through the region, with 40-mile-per-hour winds. Russian radar operators were likely huddled near their heaters, assuming nothing could fly in this mess. To a high-precision thermal sensor, a blizzard is not a barrier. It is a free invisibility cloak. The wind would swallow the sound of the motors, and the snow would clutter Russian optical sensors. The plan was a pure high-stakes gamble and a one-way trip. Ukraine was ready to sacrifice every asset, worth a few $100,000 total. The goal was to compromise a production line worth hundreds of millions. With coordinates locked into anti-jamming GPS, the motor spun up into the freezing air. The swarm vanished into the whiteout, flying just 60 feet off the deck. Inside the Ukrainian control van, 15 miles away, operators watched with surgical focus. They were not using Starlink or traditional radio, which are too easy to jam. They ran a proprietary mesh network, functioning like a high-speed game of telephone for robots. If one mama drone is hit, her sisters instantly relay the navigation data. It is a self-healing brain operating in a blizzard. To the locals in Lipetsk, the sound of the carbon fiber blades sounded like a 1970s tractor. Nobody looked up or suspected that assassins were approaching the heart of the missile supply chain. Now, let's look at the bouncers at this party, the Pantsir S1 and the Tor M1. On paper, these systems are the Avengers of air defense. A Pantsir radar is supposed to see a bird's heartbeat from 20 miles out. An hour before the real party started, those radars did catch something. The Russian Ministry of Defense began celebrating after engaging 4 long-range Ukrainian decoys. These were cheap plywood gliders with lawnmower engines. Russian crews were posting on Telegram about how they had neutralized the threat. In reality, they used $1 million missile to swat a $500 kite. By feeding the Russian ego with loud decoys, Ukraine effectively blinded the defenses. The Russian commanders were now convinced the sky was clear. They were unaware that the invisible swarm was now less than 5 miles from the factory gates. While the Russians were distracted, the Ukrainian operators were choosing their targets. The thermal event they were about to deliver would make those Pantsir missiles look like garden ornaments. 5 miles out from the Energia plant, the game of cat and mouse ended. The 4 Baba Yagas slowed down, hovering like dark mechanical vultures at 400 feet. At this height, they functioned as high-altitude signal relay stations. By staying back, The motherships maintained a clear mesh link with their children. Within 60 seconds, 20 FPV drones detached from their motherships. Each was packed with enough high-grade explosive to turn a semi-truck into a colander. They fanned out to attack from the north, south, east, and west. This is what is known as a saturation profile. Even the best Russian AI fire control computer has a breakdown when 20 targets appear from 4 different directions.
This plywood
It is like trying to catch 20 tennis balls thrown at your head at once. The first wave of 8 drones had one job: neutralize the lights. They dove straight for the main electrical substation outside the factory perimeter. One drone impacted the primary transformer, creating a blinding blue arc of 110,000 volts. Technically, it was a significant electrical discharge. To the Russians, it meant a total blackout. The factory's perimeter lights died and the heating systems cut out. Most importantly, the radar units lost their primary power and had to wait for backup generators. Inside the factory, pure chaos erupted as security teams tripped through dark hallways. Outside, Panzer crews were screaming as their thermal screens were flooded with clutter from the substation fire. The Russian response was desperate spray and pray tactics. Dual 30mm cannons opened up, sending a wall of glowing red tracers into the dark sky. One Panzer operator eventually caught a track and launched a 57 E6 surface-to-air missile. A massive fireball lit up the clouds as they hit one of the Baba Yagas. The 120-pound mothership was structurally compromised and spiraled down to the frozen earth. Russian cannons also managed to swat about 6 or 7 of the smaller FPV drones. To the Russians, this felt like a victory, and Telegram channels began drafting headlines of a repelled attack. But they forgot the cold, hard math. Russia traded $1 million missile for $15,000 worth of Ukrainian plastic and motors. Worse for Moscow, they only hit the bouncers. 3 Baba Yagas were still hovering and relaying perfectly clear signals. 13 FPV children had already cleared the fence line and were inside the perimeter. They were staring down the ventilation shafts of the lithium-ion production hall. The Russian garrison was cheering for a kill, unaware the facility was already dead on its feet. The high-stakes game was about to enter the final boss phase. The remaining 13 FPV drones screamed toward the factory as Russian electronic warfare systems woke up. A massive truck-mounted jammer flooded the airwaves with white noise. 4 FPVs lost their link immediately and spiraled into the snowdrifts. However, the 3 Baba Yagas above boosted their signals to punch through the jamming. The static cleared, and 9 FPV drones regained their vision just 100 feet from the roofs. A Panzer S1 vehicle roared into a new position, filling the air with red lead. 2 more drones were vaporized, but the remaining 7 dove toward their targets. 1 drone punched through a skylight, while another slammed into the loading dock. Multiple thermal events erupted as lithium-ion cells began a terrifying thermal runaway. The Panzer operator then locked onto the lead Baba Yaga and launched 2 missiles. The first missile was a direct hit, erasing the lead drone in an orange fireball. The second mothership was clipped by a 30mm round and began to spin violently. Russian troops started cheering, but they cheered too soon. The Ukrainian pilot used the remaining thrust to turn the spinning drone into a kinetic projectile. It slammed directly into the Panzer S1 vehicle that had just shot it. The $120 million air defense system was instantly compromised by 120 pounds of carbon fiber and explosives. That left only 1 Baba Yaga remaining. The pilot dove the drone to just 40 feet, screaming across the factory floor at 80 miles per hour. Bullets were pinging off the frame as a MANPADS missile missed by less than 3 feet. In a final Hail Mary move, the pilot aimed for the massive ventilation intake of the main production hall. The mothership went inside, and a split second later, a massive thermal event blew the steel doors off their hinges. The scene was pure surgical violence. The production line for Iskander missile batteries was now ground zero for a chemical fire. The heat was so intense, it literally warped the steel foundation of the building. That factory is effectively disabled for the foreseeable future. The real story is the domino effect on the Russian military. Every Iskander, Kinzhal, and UMPK bomb needs a high-end battery to function. Without the heartbeat from this plant, those missiles are just 5-ton lawn ornaments. Ukraine has created a massive bottleneck in Russia's precision missile supply chain. The Kremlin claims their air defense neutralized every threat, but satellite photos tell a different story. A black plume of smoke visible from space makes propaganda look very thin. It exposes a massive hole in the Iron Dome Moscow promised its people. If Ukraine can sneak a fleet 155 miles deep during a blizzard, nowhere is safe. The lesson? Never underestimate an underdog with a civilian truck and creative engineering. That is the level of strategic return on investment for this mission. For more high-stakes breakdowns of the new rules of war, like and subscribe. See you in the next deep dive.